Good morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on, and welcome to an extra special episode of Across the Pitch. My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm joined by Darren Woodhead, author of 50 Years of Accrington Stanley today, and we have an Accrington legend who played over 270 games for the club between 2009 and 2015, a former captain and one of few players to play under 4 different bosses in modern Stanley era. Welcome to the show, Luke Joyce.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, welcome, Luke. Nice to speak to you. Yeah, great. Thanks for coming on. How's lockdown treating you then?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Always a challenge with 5-year-old and 6-year-old, but they're certainly keeping us busy. And it's nice to be at home and spend plenty of time with the family and just do the simple things that I think sometimes you take for granted. And obviously playing football and being away a lot of the time at weekends, you don't always get that free time. So yeah, it's been nice just to play with the kids and just enjoy each other's company, really.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come on to your career shortly, but just there's been some big news, hasn't there, in the last week with the League Two season being cancelled. Not every division seems to be up in the air and not knowing what everybody else is doing, but it's you know what's happening to yourselves now, don't you? Obviously, for people who don't know, that you're now at Port Vale.
Yeah, I think that's all we wanted. We wanted some clarity. We wanted somebody to make a decision. Obviously, the season or the last game we played was early March, and since then we've pretty much been at home and obviously doing our own training and physical work just to try and keep in as good a condition as we can, because we just never knew when we'd go back, and that was a frustration in itself, not knowing a date. And I'm just glad, like I say, they've made the decision. At the same time, disappointed that we've finished at a point outside the playoffs, but I think in the main, the decision is the right thing to do, and it's a correct call.
Yeah, I mean, especially for somebody like you, just kind of going over your career here, ever since 2009, you've started 30, 40 plus games every season. You've got over 500 games in the league now. So for somebody like you that, your normal routine is to play a full season every year for more than a decade, this has to be, quite a change for you.
Yeah, it is. Like you say, that word routine, I think a lot of footballers can relate to that, and you're used to getting up and doing your training and, being at home, and you get into that routine of playing games and rest and recovery and training. And obviously that's been taken away from us. And I think we've been away now from sort of the training ground for nearly sort of 3 months, and that's unprecedented. You have probably 6 weeks off during the summer, but you spend a decent chunk of that training at home to make sure you're fit for pre-season. And yeah, for somebody like myself who's played a lot of games and been in the game for a good length of time, it's something I've never experienced, and it's a learning curve for myself. And I'm sure every footballer's itching to get back involved, but I think we can only do that once it's safe and we can guarantee everyone's health and safety.
Yeah, I mean, it may prolong your career, this little wrestler. Look, if you get 6 months off, and you might be able to get a few more years at the back end of your career. Who knows?
You never know, hopefully. Although I think if I keep having to run after Eva and Ralph all day, it might work against me, Darren. I don't know.
Yeah, you might have to retire. Yeah,
it's easier going to football and training than it is.
I know. A lot of people I think a lot of people are feeling that and making those comments. Right, so let's have a look at your career. Luke Joyce, started off at Bolton Wanderers, I believe, your local team, before you signed on for Wigan. Is that right?
Yeah, that was, like you say, my local team. I had a season ticket for Bolton, firstly at Burnden Park and then at the Reebok Stadium, and I was a massive Bolton fan like my dad, and we used to go to games and away games and just loved it. And it was part of the centre of excellence, as it was then, as a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, just training and playing with my local team, the team I supported, and ended up being released around the age of 10 and 11, and kind of broke my heart, really. You almost feel like your dream's over before it's even started, which is daft, but that's how much I love Bolton, and that's how much I wanted to play football for the rest of my life. So that was a tough blow to deal with, and one at a young age that it kind of stands you in good stead then for the rest of your career.
Yeah, I mean, Bolton would have been a Premier League team at that time, wouldn't they? I think probably flying higher.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they was. Yeah. Because I can remember the meeting we had was at the Reebok Stadium, and I know they moved into that once they got promoted back into the Premier League. And I was gutted, obviously, like any kid would be. And I think, if anything, then that guided my dad and my family then about any other clubs who came along in the future and kind of promise you the world. And we'd known the disappointing side of it, to be released from your local team. But like I say, you learn from it, and it's an experience gained.
Right. So what happened next then? How did you find yourself ending up at Wigan?
Just playing. First of all, playing local football for my local team called Heinsford, and we were lucky because we had a really, really good team. So pretty much every league we entered, cup competition, we won. And it's a funny one. We actually played a cup final, Lancashire Cup final, around the age of 13, 14, and the final was at Accrington's ground, at the Crown Ground. And It's funny when I look back on some of the pictures, and who would have known that I spent such a long part of my professional career playing there week in, week out. And I thoroughly enjoyed that, playing with my friends, just playing football with a smile on my face. And then the opportunity to go to Wigan came through playing for the Wigan town team side, and we came up against St Helens, whose central midfielder was, I think, the under-15s midfielder at the time for Wigan, and pretty much dominated him in that game. And there was a Wigan scout watching, and within a couple of weeks I was in there training, and it just all went from there, really.
And you managed to make a first team appearance, didn't you, in the FA Cup already while you were at Wigan? Although you had to move on to Carlisle for first team action, didn't you?
Yeah, that was unbelievable, and to get a first team appearance for Wigan, a team that had come through from the under-15s and progressed into the youth team and reserve team, and for that to be in the FA Cup at Leeds United away live on Sky Sports was a surreal moment, and one you dream of. And I can kind of still remember those feelings now of waiting on the touchline to come on as a sub, and it's excitement, but at the same time there's a bit of fear in there because you don't want to let yourself down or the team down and make any mistakes. And I think with that added pressure of it being on telly, I knew there'd be a lot of people I know watching it. So, but it was, unbelievable moment, and it made all that hard work and, from being released from Bolton then to make my first team professional appearance for a Premier League team was, unbelievable and a fantastic achievement.
Yeah, I mean, how old would you be then when you've managed to play against Leeds then for Wigan, Luke?
18.
18, wow.
18, and I think it's funny because at the start of that season we played a pre-season friendly against Accrington. I don't know if they'd just been promoted back into the Football League. So I remember, and I've looked at some of the information from that game, and I think Gary Roberts played for Accrington, and obviously Paul Mullin, Andy Proctor. I remember playing in the pre-season friendly at the Crown Ground.
Is that when Paul Jewell was the manager?
I've had a couple of...
Paul Jewell,
Paul Jewell.
I think he was a big mate of Carlisle, wasn't he, at the time? So probably outside the friendly came about, I would imagine.
No, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then it was after that was when you went on to Carlisle United, and you went here a couple of times. So how did it come about that you got up north to Carlisle?
First of all, it was I was on the bench for Wigan in the Premier League against Liverpool I think it was late January, just after I'd made my first team appearance for Wigan, and 2 weeks after that appearance, we had our meetings with the manager and the youth team staff about who was going to get professional contracts. And there was sort of 10 players at the time who were out of contract, and I fully believed I'd get a professional contract. I'd made a first team appearance, and the rest of my teammates in the youth team were saying, you'll be fine, don't worry, you'll be okay. I think the 9 lads previous to me had all been released, and I went in for my meeting thinking, they must have saved me till last because I'm going to get a contract, and they give me the news that they weren't going to offer me a contract. And to be fair, they were great with me. Paul Jewell just said, look, the easiest decision for them would be just to give me a contract. I'd played in the first team, and it would have been a straightforward decision. But they said for the benefit of my own career and my own development, there was no point in me sitting at Wigan for 12 months, 2 years, and not playing any games and not progressing. And they just said, personally, I'd probably have to take a step back to then take a couple of steps forward, and that meant leaving Wigan. Firstly, going on trial to Burnley, nothing materialised there, and then went up to Carlisle. I remember driving up there on the Monday morning, played a reserve game at Rochdale, who played at Rosendale then, I think. Did really well in the reserve game. Probably couldn't have gone much better, to be honest. It was the right performance at the right time. And then trained on the Tuesday, played in another reserve game on the Wednesday. They offered me a contract on the Thursday, and that was it. In space of 4 days, I'd done enough to impress Paul Simpson, who was the manager then, and signed for Carlisle.
Good stuff.
And then you spent about 2.5 seasons at Carlisle, it looked like. And then after that, it looks like in 2009, you went out to Barrow for about 5 matches, and then up to Northwich Victoria for 12 matches. And those were your last 2 stops before you made it to Accrington, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I didn't play as many games as I'd hoped or I'd liked to at Carlisle. I think every season the manager changed, which I don't think helped as a younger player and a player who didn't have that many games or that much experience behind me. And so, yeah, like you say, I ended up going to Barrow on loan, I think, in my 3rd season. Really enjoyed it, played 5 games. My debut was Brentford in the FA Cup, 2nd round, which was a bit of a giant killing. We beat Brentford on, I don't know if you remember it, Setanta Sports then. It was a Friday night, a miserable night in Barrow. I don't think Brentford would have enjoyed it. Anyway, we got that win. And then the 3rd round draw picked us up at Middlesbrough away. We were then in the Premier League with Stuart Downing and Robert Hoof and Alfonso Alves. And that was an unbelievable experience. I think Barrow took 8,000 fans and we got beat 2-1 then, which was no embarrassment.
Yeah, I know that they up there on the peninsula at Barrow that it's kind of the only sport in town, so they could really pack it in there sometimes when they get a big match going.
Yeah, they were good fans, and especially for that Middlesbrough game. Obviously, it was a big occasion, a big day out, and I don't think there'd have been many people actually in Barrow that day because there was 8,000 of them up at Middlesbrough, so they created a brilliant atmosphere. And I was, I think probably me inexperience showed a little bit because after my 5-game spell, I was only there for a month, and I believed I'd go back to Carlisle with a bit of experience behind me, playing first-team football and try and force my way in there, and it just wasn't meant to be. And I finished off the season, like you said, at Northwich Victoria, which I enjoyed again. Great little club, some great people. Played central midfield with another former Accrington player, Joel Byron, and really enjoyed it. And I think that's where Jimmy and John first saw me play, because I think they used to scout the non-leagues with their background and experience at that level. And I think they first saw me play there, so it proved to be, a very fruitful loan spell.
Yeah, just looking back, it looks like you said you went to Carlisle hoping that you would get some playing time. I mean, that was kind of the whole point of going there. And in 2006, 2007, you did, but then the next 2 years, not quite as much as you were looking for. And then it looks like after that spell at Northwich Victoria is kind of when your career really took off. And like you said, I think it sounds like that's where John Coleman saw you for the first time.
Yeah, and I think that loan spell could have been, a bit of a breaking point. I was unproven. Only played, obviously made my debut at Wigan, and then played just short of 30 games for Carlisle. And it's you either go one way or the other. I think then you can kind of sulk a little bit. I've been released from Carlisle again. Found myself without a club, and then I'm just desperate for an opportunity for somebody, to give me a chance. And like I said, fair play to John and Jimmy, because they were the ones to give me that opportunity. And I come close to actually signing for Darlington in that summer. I remember meeting John and Jimmy at Charnock Richard Services in those salubrious surroundings, and we had a chat, and they offered me a contract. And I think maybe a few days later I spoke to the Darlington manager, who was Colin Todd at the time, and they offered me a better contract. And I knew quite a few of the players there, because a few Carlisle players had moved from Carlisle to Darlington, and I was all set to sign for Darlington. And at the last minute, they withdrew the contract offer, so I had to ring Jimmy up really with kind of my tail between my legs and just be honest with him and said, but Darlington had withdrawn the contract, and fair play to Jimmy and John. They honoured the contract and I signed it. But obviously, like I said, came very close to possibly not signing for Accrington, but I'm very thankful that I did, because I think that following season was the season Darlington went down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as they say, the rest is history. And one thing that I kind of wanted to mention here is kind of for your first 4 or 5 seasons, you didn't quite get the playing time that you were looking for. But once you did, you really haven't looked back. And when I was looking through your stats before the show today, one thing that really jumped out to me is that you've now played well over 40,000 minutes in the Football League, including cup competitions. I did the math, and that works out to 28 days. So you've actually played an entire 4 weeks of football. And I just thought that was an impressive stat, 40,000 minutes.
Right, well, I've never known it to be converted into minutes, but yeah, like you say, a full month of football is a fair old effort, and I'm proud of the fact I've played a lot of games, and I think it's shown the belief and faith that managers have had in me to keep picking me, but also, you know, my own fitness and professionalism to keep myself right and in as good a condition as possible.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start talking about your Stanley career in a minute, but one thing that comes to mind with me is how much resilience you need, don't you, in football? I mean, you know, there's some knockbacks there, like you said, going your hometown team at 11-year-old, then, you know, you get another knockback when you've just made your first team at Wigan, and then Carlisle, and, you know, there's some guys I should imagine just fall by the wayside at that point, isn't there? Yeah,
definitely. I think, you know, my whole youth team, and I don't know if you'll remember Phil Edwards, and I know you'll remember Phil Edwards, but Kevin Lee, we played in the same youth team together. They were 12 months above me at Wigan. I think there's only us three and possibly Leighton Baines, who has gone on to actually make professional appearances in the game. And it's really a tough industry to forge a career out. And I think as good as you need to be ability-wise and physically, it's such a mental game as well. Like you say, the knockbacks and the disappointments you'll have along the way, and dealing with injuries and not being in the team. You've got to be psychologically strong, and it's
all criticism,
it really
isn't it? People's opinions and criticisms, and I suppose you've got to have a fair bit of thick skin.
Yeah, and I think the thing we're playing at Accrington was, you know, we didn't have the massive crowds, and if somebody wanted to give a bit of stick, 9 times out of 10 you heard them, and I had plenty of that in my time. So you've got to have a bit about yourself, and that, you know, that desire and attitude, like I said, and that willpower just to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, so coming on to Accrington, and I know what you mean. There's always a certain section in probably around the central area, the main stand, and they don't mind giving it to some home players if they think they're not having a good game. And we've been such a small stadium, it's you hear every word, don't you? Which is quite must be a challenge for playing.
Yeah, but you know, it's all part and parcel of the game. People pay the money and they go there and they express their opinions. It doesn't mean you listen to them. It doesn't mean they're always right. They probably are right sometimes, but I'd imagine a lot of the time they're wrong. But that's part and parcel of football. You get that at every level, and
it is.
You know, you take it off again. I think it's worse for if you've got family members in the crowd and they're sat near it and they can hear it, because you know they sometimes it hurts and affects them more than what it would affect me whilst I'm playing. Yeah,
certainly. So 2009, you came in Stanley, a season when we had a good FA Cup run. You know, you got yourself in the team pretty much straight away, didn't you? You made a lot of appearances in your first season. What are your memories of that first year at Stanley?
Yeah, but you know, really good. It was, like you say, my first season of professional football, actually being a big part of the squad, playing a lot of games. And it was an eye-opener for myself, because I'd not done that. It was the first time, like I say, I've been involved week in, week out, playing, you know, Saturday, Tuesday, and I learned a lot about myself. And I think I needed that at that age and that point in my career. When I signed for Accrington, I didn't really know what to expect. I'd seen the programmes that were they on BBC 3 or something like that?
Yeah, they were on BBC, I think. Yeah, the Eric Worley documentary.
Eric was on there, and I watched them, and I was not quite sure. I pretty much knew what I was letting myself in for.
I don't blame you.
But you know what? I loved every second of it. And I remember that first pre-season, we went down to Colchester, went down training with the army down there. I think the parachute regiment, and we just had a good set of lads, and we had, you know, real honest lads who most of us, the majority, had setbacks and been released from so-called bigger, better clubs, and it was an opportunity. There was a platform to go and express yourself and prove people wrong. And I think that's why over the years Accrington have been so successful, because John and Jimmy have gone and found players who have got a point to prove and have no doubtedly got ability, but just not been maybe pushed in the right direction or just got the opportunities that they deserved, and they've been brilliant in that. And I think I owe them so much for the opportunity they gave me. And I think if I'd not signed for Accrington, I wouldn't have had the 500 odd games and all the minutes that we spoke about. So that first season was brilliant. Loved it. Played a load of games and really learnt a lot about myself and a lot about League Two football.
Yeah, we played Fulham in the FA Cup. I don't know if Phil's aware of this. Phil, we played Fulham that year. Premier League team turned up at what was the Crown Ground, now the Wham Stadium, and decided they didn't like the changing rooms very much. So didn't change there and went to a local hotel. It wasn't their scene. That's right, Luke, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
No,
I think that's pretty much spot on. It was Roy Hodgson, was it?
Yeah, Roy Hodgson, who went on to become England manager.
I didn't start that game. I had an annoying habit of not starting the bigger cup games at Accrington. I can't put my finger on why, but I think I started the game before the Fulham game and found myself out the team, and that was the same with when we played Newcastle in a cup game as well. And for some reason, I just found myself out the team for sort of the so-called bigger cup games. But I think I might have come on as sub, but yeah, I just seemed to not be in the starting 11 for a couple of those games.
And then it was the next season, which, probably your most successful season at Stanley, wasn't it? When we reached the playoffs. It was a very good team, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. That was a fantastic season. And another funny thing when I reflect and go back to that, I didn't start that season. I wasn't in the team, and remember being a little bit frustrated, disappointed, and the season didn't start off great. I wasn't in the starting 11. I remember they signed Charlie Barnett from Liverpool, who was a player coming with a lot of sort of potential and a decent reputation. I remember it probably doesn't sound a big deal to people, but I was number 8 for my first season, and John and Jimmy had give Charlie Barnett number 8, and I think I was maybe number 14 or something like that. And I think from day one, then that kind of put me in my place in terms of I wasn't first choice this time round, and I was going to have to battle hard and force my way in the team. And I don't think I actually played that much football up until the turn of the year. I think maybe from the start of the season up until sort of around January, February time, I might have only made around sort of 10 appearances, and a few of them were from the subs bench. And
I came across an article recently, actually, about what you were talking about right now, and in that article, it had mentioned that early in that season you weren't playing as much as you had liked to, and then there was, I guess, at Blackburn, John Coleman had pulled you aside, and he thought he was going to tell you that you were going out on loan again. And instead, he pulled you aside to tell you were starting the next game, and that you looked at that as kind of a turning point in your career at Stanley.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I've not played much football. And from my previous experience of going to Barrow on loan, Dave Bayliss, who was the manager there, contacted me. And obviously, he'd seen I'd not been playing much football, and he asked if I wanted to go back there on loan. And I said, definitely, yeah, if it's an opportunity to go and play games and play regular football, I'll definitely be happy to do that, as long as obviously John and Jimmy agree to it. And I think that might have been a couple of days before John pulled me in training on a Monday, and we were training up at Blackburn Rugby Club, and I fully expected him to say, yeah, Dave Bayliss from Barrow has been on the phone and they want you to go there on loan, and do you want to go? And my answer would have just been yes, not because I want to leave Accrington, but I just want to go and play football. There's nothing worse than a footballer, training Monday to Friday and not getting that opportunity on a Saturday to play. And instead of saying that, he said, do you fancy a game tomorrow? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're starting tomorrow. I think we played Rotherham away on the Tuesday night. And I said, yeah, of course I do. And I think that was sort of mid-February time. And then I think that was pretty much me back in the team then right until we got into the playoffs. And I think at that point, when we played Rotherham, we were sort of bottom half, maybe 15th, 16th, something around there, not really doing anything special. And then we went on a fantastic run of around, I think maybe one defeat in 20, 21, 22 games. And that propelled us into 5th place and got us into the playoffs. And we had a fantastic run, and we went on to play some, great football. And I remember the pitch at that point, or if you remember, Darren, had all the drainage lines, all the sand trenches, and it was awful.
Yeah,
but I think that worked in our favour because we knew how to play it. Teams turned up and they were half beaten before the ref blew his whistle. And it's just a shame we just couldn't finish it off in the playoffs because we were that form team going into it, and I think a lot of people fancied us, and we just didn't turn up. And fair play to Stephen, and they were a lot better than us over them 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunate thing. I mean, we've spoke about it quite a bit following that. A fantastic season. That squad just then disintegrated, and everyone was out of contract, and we weren't in the position where we are now, where we've got players under contract for 2 or 3 years. It just collapsed, really, didn't it? That squad.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly. I think it might have been Joe Jacobson left. Did we have Kevin Long on loan? I think obviously we'd either gone back to Burnley. I think Sean McConville might have left.
Yeah, Sean might have
Bobby Grant, maybe Jimmy Ryan.
Yeah, I think Michael Symes was it at that time. Yeah,
Symes. We had some really good players and a really strong squad. And like you say, just at that point, Accrington was a totally different club to what it is now, and financially, and being able to keep the best players. And obviously, clubs just came along and poached players. And I think possibly maybe only sort of yourself, Dean Winard, Procky, and maybe only a handful more who actually stayed.
Yep. And then obviously the season after, that's when John and Jimmy went to Rochdale, and it was in for a bit of a turbulent period in terms of management, wasn't it? In the next few years with 4 different managers. There's not many Stanley players, like Phil said on the intro, who can say they played under 4 managers at Stanley, when you think John and Jimmy have been there for the best part of 20 years, haven't they? So how was that, playing under different managers?
Interesting, really. But I'd had a bit of experience from, like I said, at Carlisle, because we pretty much have a new manager every season. So I'd gone through that bit of change. And but I think what they did quite well was everybody who took over had experience of being at Accrington, albeit as a player. Like Paul Cook obviously came from Sligo, and he'd obviously been at the club before, so he knew what the club was about. Really enjoyed playing for Paul. Really enjoyed the training. Everything he wanted to do was play football the right way. And he wouldn't change kind of his ethos or his playing style for anyone. And if a team were better on the day and beat us, and fair enough, we just moved on to the next game. And Liam was obviously in charge, and obviously we know Liam had been at the club. And then James Beattie took over. And obviously James Beattie had been a player for sort of that 5-6 months, then building up to him becoming manager. And then obviously John and Jimmy came back. So I think all the managers who took over during that point had some experience of Accrington. It wasn't like they were bringing somebody in who hadn't been at the club. And I think it was important they did that, because if they brought somebody else in who'd never been involved with Accrington, then
a culture shock, probably wouldn't it?
They wouldn't have known how to deal with it. And I think at that point, Accrington was a kind of a club on its own in the way they operated, and the budget and stuff like that.
Good then, weren't they, at times? I mean, I should imagine you were involved with it. Quite a few of these periods where players, weren't getting paid on time, and not through anybody's fault. It's just that the sums just didn't add up, did they?
No, definitely. I had many a conversation with Peter Marsden and Rob Hayes and Vicky, who used to handle the wages, and you'd go and see them on the players' behalf as captain, and going back telling the lads, oh well, it's not going in, the wages aren't going in, and they'd ask when, and they're like, well, they're not too sure. And it was tough because we didn't always know when we were being paid, if we were being paid in terms of was it going to be a few days late, is it going to be a week late, is it going to be 2 weeks late, and it was hard, and nobody was on great wages. Nobody had really been at big clubs previously where you could rely on money that you had in the bank, so it was tough, but we just kind of dealt with it. And I think we almost used it to our advantage, and it galvanised the changing room and brought the lads together. And I always remember Jimmy Bell saying, he used to be an electrician crawling in lofts, and I understood that it was we were lucky to be doing what we did, but at the same time it was tough when you weren't being paid on time.
Yeah, I know it's obviously difficult times, and supporters don't always realise the stories behind the families, etc., waiting for the paychecks, and it's credit to all that you stuck with it. I mean, even to get in playoffs and to some of those relegation battles were that they were memorable, really. I mean, some of the results and going away, and I remember games at Morecambe and York and battling for points, and you like to yourself, and Brocky and Peter Murphy, and scoring some important goals. It can be just as thrilling week on week as a supporter. I mean, you do get stressed with it, but there were some memorable runs, weren't there?
Yeah, there was, and I had a look at a few of the seasons gone by at Accrington when we played, and like you say, we always seem to just pull results out the bag out of nowhere. We'd be on a bad run, and then you'd get to sort of March, April time, and we'd win 3 or 4 on the bounce, and no one saw it coming, and it kind of propelled us to that bit of safety. And we've had some. I remember, was it the Rochdale game away on a Tuesday night when Lee Molyneux scored 2 absolute belters?
Oh yeah.
I think we beat Bristol Rovers away, was it, on the maybe second to last game of the season? And I think Lee Molyneux scored after 2 minutes, and we were literally on for 91 minutes.
Goals, didn't he?
Yeah, and it was just it was unbelievable. And like you say, we were battling against relegation, and obviously we'd want to be at the top end, but I think just for Accrington at that point, it was an achievement just to be in the Football League. And
and
I mean, bigger clubs.
It's all part of the story as well, Luke. I mean, because without those, rearguard actions down bottom of the league, we'd have dropped out and probably never come back. So, the fact that we are now in League One as a club, it's thanks to all those players who battled through all those seasons, and supporters as well who stuck with it. Because people just see the 4 promotions, but some of those relegations are just as important. Battling away from relegation is just important for the history of the club, really.
Yeah, of course. And like you say, the future of the club kind of depended on those. If Accrington would have been relegated, and who knows what would have happened. And we all knew that was the case. And we all, did everything we could possibly to ensure that didn't happen. And, there was a lot of clubs who got relegated around that period. We were bigger clubs than Accrington with bigger budgets and bigger fan bases. But I don't think they necessarily had, the changing room that we had in terms of young lads who were doing everything they could possible to be a professional footballer. And, credit to Accrington Stanley, because, they give a lot of lads opportunities, and, lads have taken advantage of that. And, without Accrington, they probably wouldn't have had the careers that they're having now.
We have some listener questions here coming up. But before we get to the listener questions, I did have one other thing that I wanted to kind of ask you about, going back to that article. It said that when you first signed on, that you were known as a goal-scoring midfielder, and you had said that you would get around 10 a season, and then your role kind of changed, and I think that one season you did take some penalty kicks, but definitely your role changed from early in your career being a goal-scoring midfielder to be more of a defensive-oriented player. And I just wanted to know, kind of how that evolution happened for you as a player.
Yeah, I remember the day I signed my contract. I was in the boardroom, as it is in Accrington, and I was in there myself, Jimmy Bell, Eric Worley, and we were chatting away. And like I say, I'd scored a couple of goals on loan at Barrow before I signed, a few goals at Northwich. I'd scored a few goals in the reserves at Carlisle, so I was getting goals. I remember Jimmy and Eric asking me, "Well, how many do you think you'll score this season?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I'll get about 10." Well, I'm not. I don't think I've got much more than 10 throughout my whole career, so that was a false. But yeah, I think it was me and Andy Proctor played together, and Andy Proctor was an attacking midfielder who'd get in the box and score goals, and I think then I had to balance off from that and work as a partnership. So if Procky was going forward and that was his game, then I really wanted to be a little bit more defensive and try and get on the ball and maybe dictate play a little bit more. And I think that suited me. And over time, I kind of made that role and that position my own. And it's one I really enjoyed. And I've kind of carried that on now through my career. And, obviously currently at Port Vale now, we play a 3-man midfield, and I sit at the base of that and try and get on the ball and keep us ticking over.
Yeah, that was one last thing I wanted to touch on before we got into that. The listener questions is that this season at Port Vale, you guys were having a nice season. You were 8th in the table at the time things shut down, so you were knocking on the door of the playoffs. And somebody that plays the position that you play, one number I like to look at is the plus-minus rating. I see that you were +7 while you were on the pitch this year. You had started all 36 matches. You were having a really good season here before things shut down. Do you think that, assuming next season that things go back to normal, that Port Vale will be challenging for a playoff position again?
Yeah, I really hope so. I think if we can keep the squad together, we've got a really good nucleus of players, and predominantly throughout the whole season, the starting 11 hasn't changed too much. I think that's key to try and get that consistency in the team, and you develop, a pattern of play, and everyone gets used to playing with each other, which I think is key to doing well. But you just never know. Obviously other teams are going to strengthen, bring in players, and you just don't know. But I believe we've got a good team. We've got a good squad of players. We've got a good mix of youth and experience. I think the club is in a really good place at the minute in terms of what's going on off the field, with Carol and Kevin Shanahan coming in and taking over the club. The fans are getting right behind the club, and there is just a generally all-round good feel about the club, and I think that then transpires onto the pitch. And hopefully if we can get off to a good start next season, whenever that is, we can keep the run going and build on what we've already done this season, and hopefully go that one step further. And if we're not in the playoffs, then hopefully get in that top 3.
Yeah, I mean, it seems set up nicely for you there at the club. I've been quite impressed with the owners and the way they've gone about things. It seems like a good setup, and there's a lot of potential, isn't there, at Port Vale? There always has been. But I was explaining to Phil last night that you've also got a celebrity fan, haven't you? A bit of a celebrity fan with Mr. Williams. Does he ever get to games, Robbie Williams?
Yeah, Robbie. Yeah, you know what? He's actually been to 2. He didn't come to any in the first season, not what I know of, and then this season he's been twice. He gave us a bit of a pre-game motivational speech before. I think it was one of the EFL Trophy games, and we won that on penalties. He's been to a couple. Obviously, I think he was over to do the promotion of a tour he's supposed to be doing, and he had a concert arranged at Vale Park. So it was good to see him, and good to see him at the club. And he's a big fan, and obviously he's from the Burslem area, which is where Vale Park is. And it'd be nice to, if we can get a bit of success next season, then you never know, might fly us all out to LA and we can have a party with him to celebrate.
Yeah, sounds good. So no, it's great that he's taking an interest. Obviously, what he's got going on in his life, to take an interest in his hometown club. It's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah,
it's great to see him. Like you say, it's great that he's still in contact and he's still keeping an eye on us, and he knows how we're getting on. And obviously, when he's over here, it's good that he's finding the time to come to the games.
Now, Accrington Stanley has some celebrity fans as well. One of them who was recently on the show, and he's who our first listener question is, and that's, of course, the famous Steve Lowe, or Louie, as he is known at Stanley. He wanted to know who's the best keeper that you played with at Stanley and the best keeper that you played with in your career.
Oh, that's a tough one. It'd be tough to try and remember all the goalkeepers that I played with at Accrington. I'd say probably the one that comes to mind first would have to be Marcus Bettinelli. I remember him coming to the club and not knowing anything about him. He was coming on loan from Fulham. I think James Beattie signed him, and what an unbelievable keeper he was, and great lad to boot with that as well. And went on from strength to strength, and you can see that he's been called up for England, and he's played a lot of games for Fulham now in the Championship and the Premier League. So, what a top keeper. And I think, Accrington have done that for a few keepers over recent years. And like I said, Accrington give him an opportunity, and he's taken it, and his career's gone on from strength to strength.
Yeah, no, he was an excellent keeper. So I'm still looking at the fact that Steve Lowe's been mentioned in the same breath as Robbie Williams. Steve will be thrilled with that, Phil. There's a big celebrity fan.
Well,
hey, Louie's lucky bus is legendary.
Yeah, even Robbie won't have one of those. So we've got another Rob coming on now. Rob Russell, who's asked the question, Luke. He's talking about you playing at right back. He remembers you playing well when you played at right back. Do you enjoy playing in that role?
Yeah, I played. I remember when I was coming through the sort of school excellence at Wigan at under 15, 16s. I played a lot of games at right back there. And then I think it was when we went on tour, or not on tour, we went on the pre-season trip down to the Parachute Regiment at Colchester in my first pre-season at Accrington. I think we played Maidstone or Maidenhead, somebody down that way in a friendly, and I ended up playing in the second half right back and did pretty well. So I think John and Jimmy always had that in the back of the mind. And I remember playing a few games. I remember playing down at Aldershot away at right back and a couple of games at the Crown Ground. I did quite enjoy it. You get a lot of the ball. You can see a lot of the game in front of you. But I just think I probably lack the pace nowadays to play right back. So I quite enjoy my role in midfield. But yeah, I wouldn't like to come up against any quick, tricky left wingers out there.
No. So the last question was from Alex Crook, and he was asking who your toughest opponent has been in your time in football. Who have you come up against who's you've dreaded playing?
I'm not sure I've dreaded playing against anyone. I think I've pretty much played against the whole League Two over the past 10 years, so there's not many midfielders at that level I've not come up against. Obviously, in terms of some of the big clubs we played against, like your Liverpools and Man Cities, you know, you look at some of their midfielders in terms of Coutinho and David Silva and players like that. Obviously, fantastic players. But at League Two level, I always remember Port Vale had a midfielder called Anthony Griffith, who was a real sort of tough, no-nonsense centre midfielder, and he'd be one of them type of players who'd be trying to get into your psyche before the game. You'd be warming up and you'd just hear him shouting your name over the halfway line, trying to get into you really and put you off your game. So he was always a tough competitor, but you get a lot of that in League Two, a lot of physicality. A lot of players try and implement their game on you and put you off your game. But I wouldn't say there's anyone I've dreaded playing against. I enjoy the battle and physical side of it. So you always take that as a challenge and try and come out on top.
All right, Luke, we have one last thing that we do on just about every show, and this was the brainchild of Tony Robinson, who, if you don't know Tony, he's originally from Accrington. He now lives in Toronto, but travels back to Accrington every year to visit a few games, and he co-hosts a lot of interviews with us, and he came up with something called Rapid Fire. And Rapid Fire has become our most popular segment on the show. So we have a few of Tony's questions for you if you're ready.
No problem yet. I'll give it my best shot.
All right, they're not hard questions. We don't have any algebra or anything here. Do you like mushy peas or garden peas?
Mushy peas.
Mushy peas. That's a popular answer. Okay, red sauce or brown sauce on your bacon buddy?
Red sauce.
Red sauce. Okay, Tony likes the brown sauce, so he's not going to be happy with that. Beatles or the Rolling Stones?
I'll have to say Beatles.
Beatles. That's usually what most folks go with. What, we had 2 Rolling Stones so far, Darren?
Yeah, it's a minority.
And would you rather watch Coronation Street or EastEnders?
It'd have to be Corrie. I'm not a big fan of the soaps, but yeah, Coronation Street. Keep it northern.
Well, at least you know their TV shows. When Tony first said he was going to ask about soaps, I said, I don't know, Irish Spring.
Yeah, we don't know what Irish Spring is in UK, Phil, as well. So that's
that's not a kind of soap over there.
No.
What kind of soap is most popular in Lancashire?
Oh, no, I'll have to give it some thought.
Do you have like Dial? Is that one over there? Do you have that?
Imperial Leather.
Imperial Leather. Old Spice.
That's the one.
All right, and then we have two more rapid fire questions left. One is mine. Since I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, we like hot and spicy food here, and we put hot jalapeno peppers on our pepperoni pizza. Is this something you would like to try?
Yeah, I'd definitely go for the jalapenos. I like a bit of a kick and a bit of heat in my food. Yeah, so I'm partial to
Good stuff. Good stuff. And then our last question is actually Darren's question. And Darren has a singer that he was a very big fan of in the 80s and 90s. And I don't necessarily agree. So we have a question here that I'm going to give to Darren.
Yeah, well, funny you should say that, Phil, because I listened to your music, going through your music taste on the last podcast you did with Aaron and Matt, and you never mentioned Whitney Houston. So, yeah, the next this one is from the film Bodyguard. So, who would you prefer singing that song? Would it be Whitney Houston or Dolly Parton? I will always love you.
Got to be Whitney Houston, I think.
Yeah, good man. Everybody thinks that. Yeah, everybody in both sides of the pond prefer Whitney Houston. Yeah.
Well, Dolly Parton did write the song. I mean, that kind of counts for something, I think. Well, that is that it for rapid fire? Or did you have any others that we missed? You want to get into today, Darren?
No. Oh, I'm fine.
Thanks for being a good sport on that, Luke. And so Darren and I have asked you quite a few questions here, but was there anything that we hadn't asked you about that you wanted to make sure we talked about today?
No, we just wanted to emphasise how much I enjoyed myself at Accrington and the part that the club have played in giving me the opportunity to develop a career for myself. And like I've said before, if I hadn't joined Accrington when I did, then I don't think I would have had the career that I've had, and just to be given that platform and an opportunity and belief to go and express yourself and become a professional footballer, which I'd always dreamed of, is something I'll be forever in debt to the club. And it's a club that I've never sort of forgotten about or ever stopped following, because I had an amazing bond with the club. And like you say, we didn't particularly achieve that much in terms of trophies or promotions, and the club has gone from strength to strength since I left. But I won't change anything, and I love the 6 years I had there, and sort of 3 seasons as captain was unbelievable. And I do love coming back, and I think I will probably keep coming back for the foreseeable future, and watching games when I can, and bring my little lad up there so he can experience it and enjoy it.
Oh, that's great to hear. So, thanks for coming on the show, Luke. I mean, like you said, you were there 6 years, big part of Stanley's history, and it's been, brilliant to speak to you tonight. So thanks for spending some time with us.
No, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, I think you kind of hit a point that a lot of guys say when they come on the show, is that, John Coleman will find a guy out there and say, look, I know you're not getting the playing time that you're looking for. I know that we're not the club that has the biggest budget in the world, but come over here, give me a couple of good years. I'll showcase you, and it'll be a jumping off point for your career. And, sometimes that's 2 or 3 years. In that case, you ended up being, 6 years. But, here we are talking to you 40,000 minutes later, like we mentioned before. And, we couldn't be happier that John brought you into the team at Stanley and all the great years that you gave to the club. We appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your stories with us today, Luke.
No, absolute pleasure. And like I say, I owe John and Jimmy a lot. And I think, fair play to them, because like we say, if they keep losing the best players, it must be frustrating and it must be disheartening for them. But they keep going and they keep getting out there and finding players to bring in, and they keep on improving and doing well. And to see them, holding their own like they are in League One is unbelievable, because I would never have thought that would be the case when I first joined. But to see where they are now, and obviously with Andy Holt involved, and to see the progress the club is making on the pitch and also off the field is brilliant. And I think, the people of Accrington and the fans and John and Jimmy and all the staff behind the scenes deserve that, because it's a special club, and I don't think there's any other clubs that are in the Football League that are like Accrington.
Not at all. Not another club in the world like it, and that's why from 5,099 miles away, I bleed Accrington Stanley.
Cheers, Luke.
Cheers, Luke.
Much.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Bye.